What is up, everybody? Welcome to the live stream. I'm very happy to be here with you on a Sunday afternoon. It's a beautiful, beautiful Sunday afternoon out there. Not that you would know wherever you are, but it's beautiful. It's 47 degrees today. That's quite a change from yesterday or the day before, where it was like below freezing. It's almost, is spring here yet? It's almost spring, I think. Almost flying season. And that's why we're here, because you want to fly your drones, and yeah, I got a problem, and you want to, or you don't have a problem, you just want to hear me solve other people's problems. We're gonna take your questions about drones and flying, and fixing and maintaining. Before we get into the questions, I want to show you something cool that I did recently. Check this out. I wanted to do a test. I don't have the goggles handy. They're behind me. Hang on. Oh. Whoop, there you go. I wanted to do a test of these. This is a new BDI antennas for the Goggles 2. Hopefully they come out with something for the Goggles 3, because of course the Goggles 2 are, well, they're not, end of life or anything, but Goggles 2 are not the latest and greatest, but they're these flip-up antennas for the Goggles 2. And I was like, okay, well, how are we going to know if we get better range? And since I've been playing more with iNav, I thought, well, normally I would fly down the road and back, and maybe I'll do that. But what if I set up an iNav waypoint mission and try to do, because that's like completely repeatable, isn't it? Whereas when you fly down the road, maybe you're a little high, maybe you're a little low. So I did a little iNav waypoint mission. And then I layered them in Premiere so that I could, like, compare them. Isn't that cool? So here we go. 2 tests. Oh, you can't see the, hang on, you can't see the bit rate. There we go. Isn't that cool? I think it's very basic. It's the kind of thing many people have already done, and I certainly would never hold it up to something like Wesley Vardy's range testing, like his actual proper long-range testing. But, I'm a fan of just trying to get interesting results, and I did get some interesting results. Yeah, like you can see, there's places, I mean, a chart would be nice. I don't have a chart, a graph or anything, but like there's places where the stock antennas are dropping and the BDI antenna's holding in, right? And there's places where they're pretty close, but like, I feel like the BDI antenna had a little bit of an advantage. And then if we get all the way out to the end, we get to, I decided to cut it off right about where it dropped to 2 megabits per second, and I was worried it was gonna actually drop out. Right, so here in the lower right, the stock antennas are dropping. They're dropping. Meanwhile, the BDI antenna's hanging in there. And then it says image transmission signal weak, and I'm like, okay, that's it, I'm coming home. And then thanks to iNav, have a nice little return to home that I don't have to freak out that I'm gonna, lose my drone. I wonder why there's 23 sats and only 13 sats. I don't know about that. But anyway, so the stock antennas got to about 1.25 kilometers before we turned back to home. And the BDI antenna got to, well, I don't remember. A little further. Not that much further, but a little further. Let's see. There we go. 1.36. Okay, so not that much further. Some would say within the margin of error. But here's the thing that I'm curious about, and I don't know if somebody in the chat, I don't know, I'm just shooting the shit. That's not that far, right? That's not that far. Like, I know people have had the DJI 03 out to 20 plus kilometers. And of course, I'm not qualified to go that far. It's nowhere near legal to go that far. At a range of 1.2 kilometers, you could you could, with a straight face, say, yes, my spotter still had visual line of sight. If you were asked about that, so it's still not proper. But like, it almost feels like if you're going to claim to do long range testing, which I'm not claiming to do, and then you only go 1.2 kilometers, it's like, well, clearly something's up with your test that you should have gotten way further than that. I don't know. There were a couple little trees in the way, but, I don't know. Like, does one tree make that much difference? Anyway, whatever. That's the test. And the beautiful thing about it is, so that test was done with these antennas on the drone. Now, these are circular polarized antennas. The BDI antennas are also circular polarized. And I said to BDI, the stock antennas are linear. So wouldn't you have better, why did you put circular antennas? And they were like, even when used with a linear antenna, we think the circular antennas on the goggle give better performance. And I was like, well, I should run this same test with a second drone that has the stock antenna on it. And then I realized, thanks to the iNav waypoint mission, I could just set up another drone with iNav, load the exact same waypoint mission, and run it, and it would fly the exact same route. Whoa. And again, completely banal, like, duh, bread and butter stuff for people who, run iNav and RGPilot all day, every day. But for me, who's just a little sort of not as, steeped in that stuff, I was like, that's pretty cool. Okay. Anyway. So that's what I've been up to. How about yourselves? You been good? I got the old two-handed, the seal drink. Seal, like a seal, okay. All right, let's take questions. I'm going to take your questions. Blunty has got your questions queued up. Right here. Blunty's queuing them up. You got your queuing finger ready, Blunty?
Yep.
Yeah, the people love to know you're in the background. You're the little angel on my shoulder, or sometimes the devil. I don't remember what the subject was, Blunty. It was newbie drone. In our last live stream, you went on a little newbie drone rant, and I always trust your opinion. Like, sometimes I'm like, am I being too harsh? Maybe I'm overreacting. And then you'll go on a rant and I'll be like, okay, I guess that's how I feel too. It's nice to have somebody whose judgment you trust, that when they feel passionate about something, you just sort of transitively take it on. You're like, if they feel that way, that's how I feel too. Kind of like almost, and I don't mean this, almost like a spouse, if you actually...
Are you trying to call me your work wife? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, I guess I am. I am. Like, my wife, like, I've just been with her so long, and there's this thing that happens with married couples where, like, they call it transitive memory, where one of you just remembers, like, all of your family's birthdays. It's usually the wife that does that. And then the guy just doesn't bother because she's got that. And he makes all the reservations when there's a trip because she hates making phone calls. And he's got that, right? And it's one of the things that makes divorce and breaking up a long-term relationship so mentally stressful. There have been papers written about this, that it's not just you're losing this person, there's this whole mental load that you have to take on that they were taking off your plate. And I feel like that. I feel that way sometimes about, like, opinions, right? Like, there are things that I feel like I would like to have an opinion on, but I haven't put the time and effort into doing the research, and I don't feel informed. And my wife will express an opinion, and I'll be like, it's good enough for me. And I'll just adopt her opinion because I just trust her. So, anyway. Yeah, so Blunty's going to be queuing up the questions. Those questions are going to come from the YouTube chat, as we see here. From the Discord. Hello, Discord! Hello, my beautiful patrons in the Discord server. Thank you, patrons. And of course, super chats. If you want to hit the $, leave a super chat. We'll read those in just a few minutes. I usually do those around the half-hour mark, and then we go for like an hour. So let's get some questions in, though, from the not super chats for a little while. Scott Harper has a Gep RC turn and is not sure which screws to use for the props. So if you have T-mount propellers, I'm going to put a picture up in case anybody is not clear what a T-mount prop is. A T-mount is a prop that has these two little holes like this, and it drops down onto the shaft, and then the screws go down in. Actually, some people just press fit their T-mount props. If the T-mount prop is just slightly undersized or the shaft is just slightly oversized, then you can just friction fit it. And then it makes prop changes faster, but it adds to the possibility that the props will just fly off while you're flying, which sometimes happens. If you do put the screws in my opinion, for almost all T-mount props, the perfect size is M2 by 7 millimeters. Now, a lot of companies will ship 6 millimeters. And if you have a prop with a very narrow hub, or just depend. If you have a prop with a very narrow hub, then maybe that'll work. But in my experience, the 6 millimeter screws oftentimes don't fully engage with the motor bell. They'll engage, but you'll only get a couple threads, and then there's an increased risk of stripping out the motor bell. So what I did is I just went to Amazon, and I bought 100 or 50 or 200 or whatever number your budget allows, M2 by 7 millimeter screws. And I've just got a bag of M2 by 7 millimeter screws, and those are my T-mount prop screws. Because 7 millimeters is an odd size. Usually the sizes will be 4, 6, 8, and you won't get 7. But in my experience, 7 is perfect. Now, I've seen some motors that use 8 millimeter screws, and sometimes that'll work, but depending on how close the bell is to the windings, an 8 millimeter screw can go far enough through the bell that it will scrape the windings as the motor rotates, and then it will destroy the motor. So 7 millimeter is, in my opinion, and $10 for 100. Like, just buy 100 and never need to buy any more ever again. That's my opinion on that.
He mentions that the 7s have Loctite, the 6s don't. Or maybe they both do.
So don't put Loctite on your prop nuts or your prop screws. The solvent in the Loctite will dissolve the plastic, and the plastic will literally disintegrate. It won't happen immediately, but like if in 3 to 24 hours, the plastic will literally just crumble in your hand from the solvent. And basically what happens is as soon as you go to fly or while you're flying, the prop will just disintegrate and fly apart. What you have is screws, and that blue stuff that's on the screws, I don't know what it is. It's not Loctite. Some people say it's a kind of a nylon. I don't know what it is. That's okay to use. The already dried blue stuff that comes on the factory screws is fine. But don't get your own like liquid blue Loctite and put it on, because that solvent will destroy the props. But they should just be in tight enough that they don't come loose. How tight is that? You got to figure it out. If you stripped out the bell, that's too tight. Fortunately, the motors have 4 holes, and you only need 2. So if you put it in too tight and you strip the bell, you still got another chance. Don't do it that tight. If they're coming out or they're coming loose, they're not tight enough, and you just got to get a feel for it. Danny FPV wants to know, what's the best KV for cinematic flying? He's saying 5-inch cinematic. I think probably you would want lower KV, because that tends to give you longer flight times. Not really because of efficiency, more so just because if you have a lot of power, you're going to tend to use it, and then that's going to suck your batteries down faster. I think 1750 is certainly the minimum, and it just depends on how fast you need to go at full speed, and also how heavy your rig is going to be. The heavier your rig, the more KV you're going to need in order to get the power to make it move. But at that point, the heavier your rig, the more motivation you have to go up to like a bigger prop, because bigger props are going to be more efficient. So 1750 would be the minimum. Here's the thing, though. If you buy a 1950 kV motor and it's got too much power and you find it a little too punchy, a little too hard to control the throttle, you can just go into Betaflight in the PID tuning tab. Into Betaflight in the PID tuning tab. PID tuning. You go down here where it says motor output limit. Motor output limit, and you just set that to, well, what you do is you do the math. So you've got a 1950 kV motor, right? Okay. You want it to act like a 1750 kV motor. You just do 1750 divided by 1950, and you get 89.7%, 90%. So you would just put motor output limit 90%, and that would make your 1950 kV motor feel like a 1750 kV motor. And in terms of electrically, the torque, the responsiveness, the efficiency, it's not going to be exactly the same, but it's pretty close. And I like that idea because it gives you the flexibility to, on another day, turn it up again, if you prefer to. Whereas if you get a lower kV motor, that's just it. There's no way to turn a low kV motor up, but you can turn a high kV motor down. So that's how I would approach that question. I got a Beta FPV ELRS Lite RX with the flat antenna. Those are pretty bad. I was getting negative 75 dBm flying in the same room, so I installed a wire. The range is better, but still bad. Any ideas? Well, what you can do is go to this URL. I don't know this URL. I just type Express LRS bench test. Express LRS bench test. It brings me to this page before first flight. Okay? And then we go to bench test. And here is a description of how to, with a reasonable amount of repeatability, test whether your receiver or your transmitter is effed up. So you set your Express LRS module to 25 milliwatts is probably the lowest power level. Maybe it's 10 milliwatts, but you set it to the lowest power level. You put your radio 1 meter away and orient the antennas the same way. Again, just for repeatability. And then note the RSSI dBm. And by doing that, you can get a baseline of about what it should be. And if it's way off from these values, chances are that one of your antennas is messed up. Maybe your transmitter is not making the power it's supposed to make. It depends. Maybe your antenna is not the right length. It's not tuned correctly. Oftentimes, those built-in receivers don't get great RSSI, though. But that's what I would do. And if you run that bench test and your number is good, then it's something else. I don't know. But what is needed to set up DIY head tracking on the DJI O4 Pro? Well, you're going to need a head tracker gimbal, right? The fact that you're using the DJI O4 doesn't matter. As long as you're not using the RC controller. If you're using the RC controller, do the Goggles 3 have a built-in head tracker?
They do, but I don't
think
they can.
Okay. I know the G2 did. The Integra, does it have a head tracker? Did they take that out? I'm not sure.
But you can't use that with DIY, right?
I don't think so. So it has a built-in head tracker, but that's only usable with the Avata. It's not usable with DIY. So what you need is a separate head tracking gimbal that can mount the O4 camera. So for example, if you're trying to set up a head tracker, I would suggest you check out my video on the Medlin drone. Now I've got several videos about it. This one, the Medlin FPV gimbal on iNav 7, that is a more recent video that shows setting it up on iNav. And here is an older video that shows setting it up on Betaflight. Now that is a single axis gimbal, but it will get you in the ballpark of what you need to do, okay? The other thing I'd say is that you're going to want to maybe get like a 3-axis gimbal, like the Walk Snail, or the Caddx gimbal. The setup is going to be similar in that you're going to need a head tracker, or you're going to need. Does he specifically ask about a head tracker? He is. So you're going to need a head tracker. It's going to pass the signals through to the gimbal. But the problem with this is that I don't think they have a mount for the 04 camera yet. So I don't know about that. I don't know if anybody, like, these are for standard 19mm Caddx cameras. I swear they have a mount for the 03 as well. I'm pretty sure they also have a mount for the 03. But the general answer to your question is that the head tracking system is going to be completely independent of the video system. The gimbal will get the head tracker, like you may have. Do I still have this over here somewhere? Yeah, I do. So, like, this is a standalone head tracking unit that just sticks onto your goggles. And then it outputs into your controller via the BuddyBox port. And then the controller passes those signals to the receiver, and the receiver passes them to the gimbal or to the flight controller and then to the gimbal. And it's completely independent of your video system. But you have to find a gimbal that has a mount for an 04. And I'm not sure who does or doesn't have that at this point. All right. Take a couple questions from the Discord before we get to the Super Chats. I bought the VTX GEP-RC 1W with microphone and used the SkyZone 04X Pro. There is no sound coming out on the SD card videos. Yamada, I would also expect that the DVR would record the sound. The first thing I would do is I would get a headphone and make sure that sound is getting through to the goggles. Because obviously if it's not, then that's not going to work. If the DVR videos have no sound whatsoever, like not even static, go into the goggle menu. There may be an option in the DVR settings to record or not record audio. But the very first thing I would do is I would get an earpiece and I would see if sound is getting out of the goggles. And if not, then that's the first thing you got to check. Thank you, Richard Baggins, for that info. The GM3 is a white box of the C20T by Jianfei. Jianfei does have a mount for the 04. Okay, so there you go. Going back to the question by RC Tech Bench, you should look for the Jianfei C20T gimbal, or presumably the Walksnail GM3, which has a mount for the 04. Yeah, Monoculus Official, I'll just amplify that point. Head tracking is just seen by the transmitter and the flight controller as any other aux signal. The head tracker outputs 3 PWM signals, basically. I mean, sometimes it could output S-Bus or something. Sometimes it could work over Mavlink. But generally, it's just 3 PWM signals coming out of the head tracker, and they go into the buddy box, and it just looks like incoming RC channels. And then those are passed to the gimbal, and the gimbal interprets them as pitch, roll, yaw. There's nothing. If you're trying to do like built-in stabilization via the flight controller, then it gets a little more complicated. But generally, it's just a simple passing the PWM signal. Demadden says, I can't change the GPS protocol from MSP to U-blocks. Whenever I try, the flight controller or Betaflight seems to get stuck in reboot. Commands didn't even show up in the CLI. Demadden, I've seen this problem before.
This is a known bug, which I can.
Is it a known bug? I'm trying to remember.
Yes.
Blunty, save me here.
The link is in chat for the source to the GitHub.
God. See?
Basically,
work-wise.
Basically, if it gets stuck in MSP, if you change it to MSP. So if you ever set GPS to MSP and then try to swap back normally, it will not work. Okay. So if you scroll down at the bottom of that post,
do you just default the config?
Yeah, if you see under Hashlingus at the bottom, he has either remove MSP from ports tab for the UART port and then change in CLI. before changing or change in CLI. So basically, like if you go in and save with it off, so you'll go in the tab and save with it off, and then go in the CLI and set it, like in the Wrightwell's poster. So he went in and set it off.
Yeah.
And then in CLI, he set GPS provider to uBlocks, and that worked for him.
Cool. I would just have saved my config and then defaulted the whole flight controller and then deleted the lines from the config file and then pasted the config back in and then manually set it up.
Yeah, before seeing this, it was reflashed, basically, was the solution for sure.
Okay. All right. Great. I knew I remembered that issue, but I really appreciate you having the link ready to go. Awesome.
Yeah, we talked about it in chat, and then Eirik linked the link for that.
Oh, Eirik is also super helpful. Alrighty, let's get started on the super chats. Let me see. Are there any other Discord questions, just to give the patrons a little bit more of a boost? Can I point out that the table on the background right side upsets me not having a power plug where it clearly wants one? I have a whole power strip running across the back of that table, though. On the which one? This one, or this one? This one has a power strip on the floor and up underneath. And then this one has a power strip all the way across the back. I think I'm good for power strips. Yeah. I'll take one more question from Jake in the Discord, again, just as a way of saying thanks for being a patron, and then we'll do the super chats. How would you market yourself for 107 gig work? I actually... What did I call that series? I did a series of 4 interviews a while back. Here we go. This is the video. So I cut this down. So this video is the one I'm going to suggest to you. I interviewed Mr. Steele, Aaron Ciotti, Paul Nurkala, and Tommy Tabahia, and I talked to them about their advice about the story of how they became a pro and their advice for people wanting to go pro. And it might not surprise you to learn that some of them gave completely contradictory advice. So there is no one right answer here. But I thought it was a pretty good... Like, Ciotti is a smaller YouTuber who still works professionally and stays busy. Steele is incredibly well known and has been doing this forever, but he also came up in a different time, so maybe his advice isn't as relevant today. Nevertheless, still very useful. And, so I tried to get a diverse bunch of people. That video is, whose question is this? This is Jake Q. Jake, I hope I don't know which Jake this is. I'll just put that in the Discord and in the chat. And then there are longer interviews with each of them individually did I post the whole thing? I'm pretty sure I did. Did I post like the entire... Surely I did it. No, I didn't do. So there's one from... Paul, well, I'm not going to link to them individually. I'm surprised I didn't put them in a playlist. There's one from Steele. There's one from Tommy. Oh, my God. Yeah. And I did the full interviews. I'm shocked I didn't link the full interviews. Oh, well, maybe I'll get around to changing that. But there's a lot of advice. And there isn't a short answer. Yeah, it's tough figuring out how to market yourself, how to get your name out there, and then how to actually get work. It's tough. Okay, let's do the super chats.
Hold on. Can you take one more Discord question?
Sure. Who is it?
I put in a Discord question.
Where's it at? Here we go. Do you think HC0 is actually 720p 1080p like they say? Why does the picture look so much worse? Yeah, so there's 2 things going on here. If I open up Photoshop, hold on. Let me just do a screen grab here real quick. Okay, so that's this screen resolution is 2.7K. Yeah. It's whatever. that is. Hold on. Come on, Photoshop. Any day now, Photoshop. So what I'm going to do... Okay, so here's a 2.7K image. All right? 2.7K image. We can all look, and we can see that... Where's the resolution? Well, we can see that this is however many pixels by however many pixels. Let me see. Control resize. Can I resize? Image size. Yeah. So this is 2553 by 1438 pixels. Okay. I'm going to take this down to a smaller resolution. Let's take this down to 10%. That's going to be 255 pixels by 144 pixels. Okay. Done. Okay. Now, oh god, that's horrible. Maybe not quite that low. Let me do 25%. There we go. 640 by 480 roughly. Okay. So now that is a 640 by 480-ish image. It's reminding me of the 80s. Okay. Now, I'm going to resize this image. Image size. And I'm going to set the resolution to 1920 by 1080. Okay. Now, is this a 1920 by 1080 image? Some would say, yes. There are 1920 by 1080 pixels in this image. Okay, well, let's just image size 5,000 pixels. Is this a 4K image? Absolutely. There's 5,000 pixels there. That's a 4K image. Okay, but wait a minute. It's a 4K upscale of a 640 by 480 image. Yes, technically there are 5,000 whatever pixels there, but it's not actually a 4K image. And that's an analogy for what's going on with HD0. When HD0 says they have a 720p feed, they are 1000% telling the truth. The camera sensor is reading off 720, 1280 by 720 or whatever the resolution is. Every single one of those pixels is real and is coming off the sensor. But the actual detail you get from the image doesn't look like the maximum amount of detail that we know a 720p image can convey. Because there's high pass filtering and there's other things that they do to make sure that they can get the image down into a wireless transmission medium. When they say that it's 1080p, it is 1080. There are 1920 by 1080 pixels going across the air, but the actual detail that you see is less than that because of the things they have to do to make it able to be transmitted and processed. So that's my take on that. They are telling the truth, but when you look at it and you go, well, that doesn't look like a 1080 image to me, you're not wrong. Blunty, you feel like that's a good answer? You got the gist of it?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
I don't think they're fibbing exactly, because if you take HD0 down to 540, it looks even worse. So, like, there's something going on with that 720. What's the actual resolution? The only way to answer that question would be to use a resolution chart, which is a test pattern with a series of horizontal lines and vertical lines. And I'm just going to try to find one. Yeah, like it would look something like this. And what you do is you point the camera at the test pattern and you see what is the smallest number of lines that you can distinguish. Or this. This is another resolution test pattern. So the only way to measure the actual ability of the system to resolve images would be to use something like this. Okay. All right, let's do the super chats. Hey, Bardwell, I think you should give Nitro RC fuel cars a chance, says Alexander Barker. Thank you for $20. So I have done Nitro cars a long time ago, not very much. And actually, no, it wasn't cars. It was my first airplane was liquid fuel. I assume it was nitro fuel because it wasn't gas. It wasn't like literally gas. I'm not sure I see the appeal compared to electric. I mean, sure, it's nice to be able to just refuel your car for like an endurance race, but, you know, I'm very happy with electric. You just put your battery in, you drive for 15, 20 minutes, whatever, and your battery's dead. You put another one in or you put it on the charger. And electric is just, you know, you're not dealing with the hassle of liquid fuel. The torque and responsiveness is bananas. I mean, maybe I just don't. I mean, there are things in the world, like if I had my druthers, I would, well, I was going to say I would still drive a stick shift. My car is an automatic because when we bought it, my wife said, okay, you're buying a Mustang, but you have to get an automatic so that in an emergency I could drive it too. My wife doesn't drive stick. And that was my concession to her when I just one day woke up and said, I'm buying a Mustang. But the 10-speed is so good. I'm not even sure I'm not even sure. My point is, like, I appreciate if you're just like, I like liquid fuel. That's my jam. Even though in some ways it doesn't perform as well as electric. It's just what I like. I get that. I'm just not sure I share it. And brushless and Lipotech is so good. Like, it's so good. Please recommend ND filters that fit the 04 Pro FPV cam. Thank you, JC Cantrell. JC, I'm pretty sure the Avata 2 filters will fit the 04 Pro camera. That's what I've been told. I haven't tested that personally. Yeah, Avata 2 filters, I believe, fit the 04 Pro cam. Yeah, Skydozer, the Ford 10-speed automatic is very good. Like, here's the thing, though, and I've said this before, and I'll just, you know, sometimes when I bitch on a live stream, the thing I asked for comes true. The only thing I want from the Ford 10-speed is when I have it in paddle shift mode, I want it to shift. I want it to pretend it's only a 5-speed. Okay? In other words, if I decelerate and I go into a turn and I downshift, I don't want it to go 6, 5. Because if I'm decelerating into a turn, I probably need to grab more than 2 gears because the gears are so tightly spaced. So if I put it into like sport mode or track mode and I start using the paddle shifters, I want it to, at least when it downshift 2 gears at a time. Maybe not even upshifting. Maybe upshifting, it could just go 1 gear at a time. But when you're downshifting into a corner, you don't want to go brake and downshift, downshift, downshift to get from like 5, 4, 3, 2. You know what I mean? And the thing is, they could do that in software, but they don't. I wish they would. Ford, make it happen. MKFPV, thank you for 49 CZK. Drone for Goggles 3 and Master Pocket for 300 euros. You want a $300 drone that will work with the DJI Goggles 3 and the Radio Master Pocket. I figured it out. Yeah, learn to double tap. I know you can. It's annoying. It's annoying. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying is it's annoying. When you're downshifting, do you ever want to just downshift from like 7 to 6? Whenever you're downshifting, you're decelerating hard into a corner. When you're accelerating out, you can only accelerate so fast. And so going up one gear at a time kind of makes sense. Just to keep yourself in the torque band. But for decelerating, I think you're never just going one gear at a time. It's an automatic. There's no double clutching. $300 drone. Well, you're going to want the 04, clearly. If you've got the G3, you probably want the 04. I don't think you're going to find a $300 drone with the 04 on it, though. This isn't even out yet. They haven't even released the 04 for this one yet. The other problem is that the frickin' air unit by itself is almost all of your $300 budget. You're not going to get a 5-inch, that's for sure. Okay. Flywoo Flybe 2.0 with the DJI 04 air unit on it. Oh, that's the 04 Lite. That's still not bad. I think you're going to be looking at a 2 to 2.5 inch drone with the 04 Lite on it if you need to get under $250. I think you're going to struggle to find the 04 Pro. You might find the 04 Pro at this price. It's possible. But it's going to be a smaller drone. I like the Flywoo drones. Wish I could sort by 04. I'm not sure I'd recommend like the fly times, like a Cinewhoop style. Let's see what they've got with the 04. No, I wish I could do a more robust search. Here is FlyLens 85 HT, so that's $400. See, anything with the 04 Pro is going to be $350, $400. So I think you're going to have to go with the Lite, and I think it's going to be something like that 2-inch that I suggested. So that's my official suggestion. Flywoo Flybe 2.0 HD 04 2S ultralight FPV drone. Open prop, going to be okay outdoors, going to fly pretty good for acro. That's my suggestion. Thank you, Simo Iliev, for 10 BGN. The weirdest thing today, both my Air 75 and my Meteor 75 are temporarily blackout with no OSD when diving a semi-abandoned Stadium Lights tower. Could be my Sky Zone goggles, but didn't happen when I moved to a different spot. Black signal is your camera dropping out, not interference. Interference causes static or snow. So blackout means your camera dropped out. That can't be related to the location. If something happens in a specific location, it's RF interference most of the time. Or an obstruction is in the way between you and where you're standing. So I think that it was a coincidence that it happened in the same spot, although obviously I can't be 100% sure. And if you tell me you had black screen with no OSD, I think it's your camera. Now, if it was black screen with OSD, I'd be even more sure it was your camera. But sometimes when you lose camera, you lose the sync pulses, and that causes you to lose OSD. So, Super Guy 88T, I disagree. I like to argue, so Super Guy says, and by the way, Supra also a great car. The double downshift is not possible because the gear speed sensors have to read the speed of the gear, and it has to read that speed before it overrides the engine by blindly going into a theoretical gear. I don't think that's true at all. I am as confident as I can be, and obviously you might know about cars, and I might be talking out my ass, but it's my live stream, so it's my prerogative to talk out my ass, and I respectfully, if I'm talking out my ass, I acknowledge that, and then you can just shake your head at how dumb I sound. It seems to me like the fucking computer in the car knows the gear ratios, and the computer knows how fast the car is going, right? So the computer knows before it attempts to grab a gear approximately what RPM the engine is going to be at. And in fact, it will actually, before it downshifts, it'll bump the engine RPM, you know, so that it can downshift and it can smoothly rev match or whatever it needs to do. So like if I'm going 70 miles an hour and I immediately go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, it will not go into first gear. Right? It knows it can't go into first gear at 70 miles an hour. It'll over-rev the engine. It seems to me like if it can go down 1 gear, it can go down 2 gears. That's my opinion. Now, if I'm just wrong and that's not how it works, I accept that. But that's stupid. That's stupid. The computer should know if I'm going at any speed at any gear, it should know what RPM, and it should just have thresholds for if you're going faster than this speed, don't go into this gear. It shouldn't need to sense the actual engine RPM to know whether it's safe to go into the gear. Right? That doesn't make any sense. After 3 years, back on the sticks. Thank you for still making content. Thank you for the 5 Swiss francs. Just because, thank you for $2. Donko, mate. Donko. Richard Baggins says, have you tested Gemini mode with the older True Diversity RXs? Yes, it didn't make that much difference, but it didn't hurt either. Gemini doesn't make that much difference depending on your situation. If you have a Gemini receiver, then it makes a little bit of difference at the edge of range, but it doesn't increase your range by 25% or 20% or maybe even 10%. It just gives you more solid LQ while you're still in range. What are the best batteries for FPV? Asks Boss94. I have the answer for you. Today, we are in a unique position. Very seldom in the world of FPV is it possible to say, without reservation, this is the best product in a given category. There's usually a lot of prevarication back and forth, well, if this, then that. And today, in the world of batteries, there is a best battery. And I'm going to show you what it is. I'm not making this up. These batteries from SMC are the best. Okay? And I know that.
Hi there.
Thanks to Chris Rosser, who did some testing. Wow, that is not a complimentary. There we go. Chris Rosser did some testing. And you can go check out his video if you want. I am so glad that I sent, a lot of you don't know this, but years ago, I bought a battery test machine, and I was doing battery testing. And long story short, Chris Rosser got into the testing world and is a real engineer and is better at it than me and also has more time and energy for it. And I was like, I sent him my battery test machine. Technically, it's on loan, but I probably will never get it back because he's doing amazing work. And the world is just better that he has the machine instead of sitting in my basement not being used. He tested these batteries, and they are insanely good. Now you can watch the whole video, but you see these two lines up here? That's the SMC batteries. They held voltage much higher and for much longer than all of the other packs. Right? Oh, well, that probably is just because they're extra heavy and they're lying about their energy density or their weight. Nope. They're actually, the 1400 is 212 grams compared to the Dogcom 1380, 225 grams. Compared to the Tattoo 1400, 228 grams. The 1600 SMC is 240 grams compared to a 1550 Tattoo, 255 grams. They're lighter, milliamp hour for milliamp hour, than the other packs that are comparable to them. They perform better, not by a little, but by a huge margin. They have better peak power. They have better constant power. They have better everything. They're better in every way. And even Chris Rosser, first of all, he's an engineer. And second of all, he's English. And the English are famous for their reserved, if an English person says something sort of vaguely nice, that's like an American freaking out. So for Chris Rosser to be like, I can't believe how good these are. They're so good. They're ridiculously good. They just beat everything in every category. So, and here's the beautiful thing. Where do I buy them? FPV racing packs from Rotor Village available. Click here for third-party testing. Can I just buy them right here from SMC? There we go. Here's the other thing. They're not even that expensive. Like, they're not the cheapest. But if you compare them to like a Tattoo R-Line V5, which they beat in every category. Tattoo R-Line V5, 6S, come on. 1800 mAh, 1480 mAh, $40. Okay, so they're the same price. Fine, they're the same price, $40, but better. All right. So, I've got some coming. I'm going to test them out as well, although given Chris Rosser's results, I know what the results will be. There's only one thing I want you to know if you buy these batteries, which you totally should. Look at the voltage. Do you see that all these other batteries, they have this long plateau, and then they drop off a cliff? And do you see that the voltage where they drop off a cliff, let's say it's roughly 21 volts. Okay, so 21 divided by 6S is 3.5 volts. They roughly drop off a cliff at 3.5 volts. But the SMCs hold much higher voltage until eventually they drop off a cliff at a little under 22 volts. Let's say 21.7 volts. And that's 3.6. So not that much different. But also, they have a steeper drop-off. I've talked to guys who've flown these batteries, and they say you have to be careful because you're used to waiting until you see like 3.5, 3.4 volts, and then you come in and land. But these batteries will hold 3.6 volts, 3.6 volts, 3.6, 3.6, 3.6, 3.6, 3.6, and then drop off a cliff. And so they'll surprise you with, you have to be aware that they'll drop off a steeper cliff because they're holding voltage higher. This is a good thing, but they will surprise you at the end of the pack, and you'll kill the battery without meaning to. So that's the only catch with these batteries.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, for sure.
Why, is there any way that they have great performance on the bench at 15C, but not in the air at 100C?
No, is the short answer. Now,
okay,
because, and obviously the real world is a complicated thing, so it's hard to make universal statements. But in general, no, because the performance at 15C is a battery's C rating is essentially proportional to its internal resistance. There's more to it, but the things that make a battery hold voltage at 15C are going to make it hold voltage at 100C until you hit a point where you get thermal breakdown. So in theory, you could have a battery with very low C rating, but then it has it's very sensitive to overheating. And if you run it really hard to the point where it overheats, then it has physical damage, it breaks down, and then so at 100C it destroys itself, but at 15C it's fine. Like, as long as you're staying, I would say, as long as you're staying below the threshold where you're damaging the battery due to thermal breakdown, I think you're probably fine. As long as you're staying above 3.0 volts or whatever the chemistry's minimum threshold is. And it's tricky because, like, obviously we want real-world testing, but discharging at 100C, like, that requires big machines that can dissipate a shitload of heat, and it's just not something that's accessible to the average, even like like Chris Rosser's test machine has 2,000 watts continuous and 3,000 watt peak capability. It has gigantic heat sinks with fans blowing on them, and it cost $4,000. So it costs $4,000 to have a 2 kilowatt discharge load. 2 kilowatts is not that much. 2 kilowatts, 2,000 divided by, let's say, 25 volts, that's 80 amps. 80 amps at 6S voltage. And that's so, like, you have to do the testing at a lower C rate and extrapolate upwards. In my experience, I've done some testing of whether the results extrapolate to higher, and they always do. A battery that performs well at 10C always, in my experience, performs better at 50C or 100C, although 100C tests are very difficult to do. So, yeah, good question. Anyway, if you're shopping for batteries, two things. Number one, if you absolutely need like a $20 pack, then don't buy the SMCs. The SMCs are a $40 pack, which is fairly premium, although I've seen 6S 1500, 6S, whatever, that class of pack, I've seen them selling for $45 or $50. So it's not the most expensive, but it's not the cheapest either. And the other thing is, if you're trying to do long range, then you will be better served with a high density lithium ion pack, you know, something like this. That's going to have lower C rating, but much higher energy density. But if you're doing high power discharge, like a freestyle or racing drone, these SMC backs they're just like the best today, hands down, no question. If you're going to spend $40 on a racing or freestyle battery for a 5-inch drone, if you need a 1400 or 1600 5-inch with a high C rating, those SMCs are the best today, period, no question. That's amazing to be able to say that. And it won't last. If you're watching it today, it's February 2025. If you're watching this video in August 2025 or October or November or 2027 or God knows how far into the future it is, somebody else is probably going to find out where SMC is getting these cells, because SMC doesn't make these cells. Somebody else is going to find out where they're getting these cells. They're going to buy the same cells. They're going to sell the same battery. Although it's worth pointing out, SMC is doing it at a very low price for the quality of the cells. So anyway, please recommend some sub 250 0304 lithium ion 18650. Thank you for 20 CZK Pavlo Mazuha. Lithium ion? I don't think it exists. If you're trying to stay under 250 grams, I don't know how you're running lithium ion cells. I don't know. Like maybe if you had a 2S bird, but all the 2S birds that I'm aware of, they're designed for LiPo, you know? So I don't know about that. Sub 250 lithium ion. Yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah, I don't have a good suggestion for you. I'm sorry. I'm not sure there is one. Who the hell is SMC? Asks Yannick. Yannick FPV, SMC has actually been around for a long time in the car racing world. They're not a nobody company. They've been around for years. In fact, a long, long time ago, they sent me some batteries, some FPV batteries to test, and they did very well. So they're not really well known in the FPV world, but they are absolutely a company that has been around with a reputation for engineering good quality batteries. BatRX, thank you for a $5 super chat. I recently threw a DJI 04 Air Unit Lite on my Happy Model baseline and cannot for the life of me get the OSD to display. BatRX, first of all, thank you for the donation. Technical problems like this are difficult to solve on a live stream because they require a lot of back and forth. Like, what UART is your? Can I see your wiring? Can I see your ports tab? I have to go back and forth with you, and that's very slow on a live stream and doesn't make for great content. So usually we'll recommend that you email jb@joshuabardwell.com if you have such a question. We just have to do the basic checks. Check the wiring, check that the TX and the RX are reversed correctly with the 04 air unit, the white wire goes to TX, the gray wire goes to RX. On the flight controller, check the ports tab, load the preset, don't just set up the ports tab, etc., etc. These are things I can walk you through over email, or if you get a one-on-one call with Blunty, we can walk you through it. But we just have to check all those things, and we're probably not going to do it here on Livestream, you know. Yeah, in beta flight, go to the presets tab, load the 04 preset, and select the correct UART. That will set everything up correctly. Luke Stearman, thank you for $2 super chat. I'm building a 5 inches, $30 worth Zing over Emax Eco 2. No. The Zing E Pro might be a better choice than the Eco 2. I recently have been working on redoing my website, and I've got the 5-inch freestyle page completely updated. And if we go to the motors section, the Eco 2 is still on here, but I got some feedback from the folks in my Discord server. They said, like, I think a lot of the people in our local group have moved away from the Ecos. Number one, because it can be hard to get spare bells for the Ecos. And number two, because they're getting better results with the Zing E. It has a Unibell. It's the same price and has more accessible spare bells. Does anybody know what corners are being cut on the Zing E to get the price down compared to the Zing motors, the Zing 2? I can't find any documentation of what aluminum alloy the Zing E motor uses. Is it the 6063 aluminum and that's why they're cheaper, or is it also 7075? Can anybody tell me? Because I can't figure it out. I know the Zing 2 has a titanium shaft and the Zing E doesn't. Other than that, I cannot find where they cut the corners to get the price down. And nowhere, the Zing 2 motor says 7075 aluminum. The Zing E motor never says what aluminum alloy it is. Does just the titanium versus steel shaft make such a big difference in the price? Is that it? I don't think. That doesn't seem. Yeah, Colt saying, I'm wondering if they use 6061 aluminum on the Zing E Pros. Or 6063 or whatever the softer aluminum is. I think they use NSK bearings the same as the Zing 2s. So those are high quality bearings. Anyway, if anybody can actually get me concrete like differences between the Zing E Pro and the Zing 2, I'd be curious, because I can't figure out why they're so much cheaper, and I'm kind of curious. I'd just like to know. Yeah, but I don't want you to guess. I can guess. I want you to find me documentation and tell me. Siani says titanium versus steel shaft is a $10 difference. Wow, for real? Well, that would do it. That would do it. Wow. That's roughly the price difference between the motors. Shocker. When are we going to see Big Bard make a FPV surface car? You already saw it, my friend. Well, you didn't see it, or you would know. I built an FPV crawler a while back. Can I show you something?
Oh, yes.
Put these on. Here's the controller and the wheel.
Yo!
Okay.
Yo, that's super cool.
This 1/10 scale rock crawler is so freaking fun. It can go just about anywhere. It's got 2 speeds. It's got locking differentials. My car doesn't even have locking differentials. But what makes this even more fun is putting FPV on it. Anyway, yep, I already did that. What's your opinion on the Rush FPV Blade H7 or F722 flight controllers? Not a big fan of them. Rush makes okay hardware, but I didn't like that the Blade flight controller was all plugs. It was just plug, 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 plug. And it had a really restrictive layout. No solder pads, just everything was a plug. Well, what if I don't want to use plugs? So, oh, well, this one has solder pads, but they're on the bottom or the top. I don't know. Maybe that's an older model. Apparently, that's an older model. Or maybe it was that was the 20 by 20 version I was complaining about. It's still, the layout is, like, the solder pad layout is freaking annoying. Like, are you kidding me? It's fine. I don't know how good the ESC quality is. I don't know whether it's like a super, super powerful ESC. But $60, it's fine. I'm glad it has solder pads. The one I remember didn't have solder pads, and I was annoyed with it. It doesn't, like, knock my socks off, though. Does that help? Is that what you're looking for? Do you know if WTFOS has any plans to break the 03 or 04 to get full OSD with iNav or RGPilot? I remember when the G2 and the 03 came out, the WTFOS team said they were playing with cracking it, but that it was much, much harder than the Vista and the V2. I'm going to guess if they were going to crack the 03, they would have already done it, and they haven't done it, so I'm going to guess that they're not going to do it. But you never know. Just stopping in to say hi. Getting back in the hobby. Longtime listener. Thank you for $5 ET Studios. And Eugene Towels. Thank you for $5 Canadian. Watching that video now when we're going to see Big Bard make a long-range surface car. It's hard to make a long-range surface car because when you're on the surface, your radio link, you would need... I was about to say, you would need Starlink. What if you were to take Starlink and put it on a surface car so you could drive anywhere without losing your link? That's kind of cool. No, long-range surface car would be a very consistent way to test VTXs. Now, you can't test VTXs on the ground. There's too much terrain interference. But the latency wouldn't be a big deal on a surface vehicle like it would on an aircraft. Starlink needs clear view of the sky. Yeah, you could figure it out. Do you know what you could do? You could use the walk snail repeater with a surface car. That's an interesting idea. You could put the repeater up on a drone and hover the drone. Anyway. I'm not the first guy to think of putting a Starlink on a surface vehicle, I'll bet someone's done it. Does an RC car require VLOS to be legal? No. FAA doesn't care if you're on the ground. They only care if you're in the air. What are your thoughts about the SpeedyBee 800 VTX? It's fine. It's cheap and it's capable. And at a price of $33. Like, these days, VTXs are kind of going up in price. Frankly, $33 is a pretty competitive price these days. It's solid. It takes 5 volts input, which is, that's also, it's one of the few VTXs these days that'll run off of 5 volts, which could be a plus or a minus, depending on how you feel about it. It's a pretty solid VTX, though, for the price. Wrong one. Tommy asks, I'm looking to buy a 3 to 3.5 inch Cinewhoop with the 04 Pro. I know GepRC released the Cinelog 3.0 with 04 Pro. Are there any other options worth recommending? Tommy, there's other bind and fly Cinewhoops out there. I always go back to the GepRCs. They're really solid. I know more pros who are using the GepRCs. It doesn't mean that people aren't using the others or they're not good, but I always feel like the GepRC Cinelog is a fairly safe choice until they screw up and release a stinker. Now, the 04 Synolog is a new product, so maybe this one's a stinker. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that, it doesn't have the months and years of reliability that the 03 version has, but I would feel like that would be a pretty safe bet. Axis Flying makes a Cinewhoop. iFlight makes a Cinewhoop, but I think the Gepard C would be my go-to. And that is going to catch us up on the Super Chats. So, let's go back to the not Super Chats, the mundane chats. OEB asks, I'm sold and ready to build an 8S 5-inch. What's the feeling that attracts you about it? Should I consider durability first, or can I get away with playing weight weenie a bit? OEB, for these high-powered, fast birds, I think 8S 5-inch really shines when the bird starts to get heavier. The lighter the bird is, the less you need 8S to really make it pop. Obviously, the lighter it is, the more it's going to pop as well. But the other thing is that when you've got an ultra powerful bird, you need to put a little more thought into durability, because when it crashes, it's going to be going faster. So I would target, for a 5-inch 6S build, my ideal would be around 700 grams. I mean, if you can get 700 grams with a GoPro, that's amazing. And if you can get 650 grams without a GoPro, that's amazing. It's going to fly really well. That's not always possible to achieve, but that's my sort of ideal weight targets. On the other hand, with an 8S bird, I think I would be shooting a little higher, like 750 grams, maybe 700, maybe as much as 800 grams. And it's still going to be fast as hell, but you'll have a little more durability. Yeah. Miratz asks, after a crash, my Beta FPV Pavo 2.0 Pro stopped showing telemetry on the DJI 03 Air unit. The 03 stays in low power mode. Connectors and cables seem fine. Miratz, the first thing you're going to want to check is the TX and the RX wires. Because the problem happened in a crash, you know it's not configuration. You know it's physical damage. So you're going to check those wires, maybe replace the whole plug that goes between the air unit and the flight controller. Even though it doesn't have visible damage, maybe it has some kind of damage. If you have a spare air unit, unplug the plug from the air unit and plug in your spare air unit and see if it works. You just have to do process of elimination by swapping parts out to see. If you can't visually find the damage, you just have to start swapping parts until you find the one that's damaged. It's not like a great answer, but it is the answer. Unreality posts in the Discord, going back to the question of whether the WTFOS devs are going to crack the 03. Unreality points out that there is a project for the 03 and the V2 goggles to get full iNav OSD. But the distinction there is that the goggles have been cracked, not the air unit. So the V2 goggles have been cracked, and that means that they can do whatever they want in any of the goggle modes, including the 03 and the 04 modes. But the 03 itself has not been cracked, just the goggle side. So as long as whatever changes needs to be made can be done solely on the goggle side, the V2 goggles can have them done, whatever air unit is being used with them. But that is true. Notice, I'm just going through and getting some of the Discord questions here. Notice asks, I need to adjust the channel map in Betaflight on every quad I build and buy. Is there a setting I can change on my radio model so I don't have to? Yeah, you change in the mixer screen. Go to the mixer screen and rearrange the channels in the mixer screen so they're in whatever order is Betaflight's default. That's how you do it.
You can also change it on the setup tab, or the setup radio setup.
If you change it in the
radio
radio
model you make
That's right. So if you change it in the radio setup tab, then any new models will have the new channel order, but it won't affect your existing models.
This is a good place for this question. Isn't it that the channel order doesn't affect new models, but the mode does?
The stick mode affects all models.
Okay, so if you happen to have the mode wrong and you selected the right mode, then that might solve your problem.
Yes.
But otherwise, if you change the order in the setup, then any new model you make will have the correct order you've set. Otherwise, you need to change it in the mixes to correct existing models.
And the structure that EdgeTX uses is that you have a physical control, the left stick, and the left stick has 2 axes. And then by setting the controller mode, you tell the radio that the left stick has throttle on the vertical axis. And then that becomes the throttle control. And then you have the throttle input in the input screen, which is reading from the throttle. So there's the physical gimbal, and then there's the throttle, which is a sort of a logical control that is mapped to the gimbal. So when you change the controller mode from like mode 1 to mode 2, it remaps which gimbal is the throttle. And that happens before any of your inputs and mixes, which is why it affects all your models. But when you go into radio setup and you change the default channel order, that only affects new models that you create, which order that they go into the mixer. You still have to go back and change all the existing ones. Here's a question from Hedgewood TV. I'm about to buy my first drone setup, and I'm quite set on sticking with the O3 and the V2 goggles. Is this reasonable, or should I go with the O4 instead? Well, if you've got the V2 goggles, then the O4 is not an option for you because they're not compatible. You may as well stick with the O3. I have bad news for you, though. I don't believe DJI is going to keep making the O3. In fact, we may already start to see them be unavailable, although I don't know how long it'll take for them to sell out. Like I know for a fact that Caddx told me they weren't making the Vista anymore, that it was done. I don't know whether RunCam will keep making the Link. And I don't know for a fact whether DJI will keep making the O3, but I suspect that they won't. So you will have to get used O3s. Your ability to buy used O3s and or binded flies with O3s will dry up. So that's the end of the line for you. Because if Vistas go away, which they are going away if they're not gone already, that's straight out of Caddx's mouth, then does that also mean the RunCam links are... I haven't been able to get an answer from RunCam as to whether they're going to keep making the Link. But really, it's DJI who makes the Vista and the Link. And then RunCam and Caddx rebadge it. So if that decision comes from Caddx, because Caddx is like, we're done with this DJI bullshit, we're moving our own direction, okay, then RunCam could still keep making the RunCam Link, and you're still okay. But if DJI has made the decision to end production of that VTX, then you're done. And if the O3 goes away, then you literally cannot buy an air unit that's compatible with your goggles except on the used market, which is a pretty bad situation to be in. But if you were going to switch to the G3 or the Integra or whatever, the longer you wait, the lower the price will be. So you may as well wait. Let's see here. With the new Radiomaster XR series receivers shipping soon, will you have to upgrade an ELRS Boxer to take advantage of dual band transmission? Well, sure, because the Boxer only has single band transmission, but you can bind a Boxer to an XR series receiver in 2.4 gigahertz mode. The question would be, if you have a Boxer, why would you bother buying XR series receivers, right? If you did want an aftermarket module, you would buy the Nomad. The Nomad's the place to go. Has anybody tried purple Loctite? I've heard purple is for smaller screws. No. What is purple Loctite? Low strength purple thread locker. Is it like blue, but it's weaker so that on smaller screws, 1/4 inch and smaller, control lubricity and protects threads from rust and corrosion. I mean, I've never had a problem with blue, so is this for really tiny screws? I've never had a problem with blue, so I don't know why I would mess with purple. Medium strength, removable with torque. Low strength, easily removable. Select for non-crucial applications and if disassembly is a known possibility. So like, it sounds like purple is worse. Low strength, easily removable. Blue, select to ensure components don't come loose at application. Isn't that exactly what we want? We want to make sure that the screws don't come loose in vibration and shock. It sounds like purple is actively not correct for our application on drones. It sounds like blue is definitively the correct choice and purple is definitively the wrong choice. Everything on a drone is a crucial application that needs to not come loose in application and with the possibility of disassembling in the future.
Today I learned there's also a green Loctite.
Green is for... Isn't green for like pins and... Yeah. It's permanent. We don't want that. Like green you would use for pressing a shaft into a bell or something like that is my recollection. Yeah, for like press fit shafts and so forth, you would use green. Pre-assembled fasteners like set screws. Boy, I could talk a lot about... I could spend a lot of time thinking about thread locker. Yeah. Choose the right one. Blue is the right one. Siati says, green fixes slipped motor bells for another 10 to 20 batteries. Is the DJI O4 worth buying if you have the Goggles 2, or should I get the Goggles 3? If you have the Goggles 2 and you want to buy an air unit, your choice is the O4 today. There are still some bind and flies out there with the O3, though. So the question you might ask is, assuming you have the option of buying an O3 or an O3 bind and fly, would you be better off buying an O4? I do think the O4 has better range and penetration than the O3, even when used with the G2. It's just a question of the price. And that's, the camera, the O4 camera is better than the O3 camera. It has better range and penetration. You're not going to get the advantage of racing mode or 60 megabits per second, though. I think that if you have the G2, there's still a lot of motivation to buy the O4, but it's not a must-have upgrade to get the G3. That's my opinion. Is it recommended to use washers on props or just on top? None of the above. Definitely don't put a washer below the prop. The whole point of a washer is to let something slip. You do not want the prop slipping against the motor bell. Do not put a washer under the prop, for God's sake. And on smaller props like 5-inch, 6-inch, 7-inch, you usually don't need a washer under the nut. The nut itself is enough to hold the prop. So that's my opinion about that. Okay, washers don't always let things slip. Washers spread force. But a washer between the prop and the motor would, I think, let it slip. I'd be worried about that. I have a patch antenna that has 2 modes, right hand and left hand. How do I know which one to use for analog? You have one of those antennas where depending on which SMA connector you plug it into, it switches polarization. The dual feed antenna. Yeah, it's one of these, a triple feed. Okay, triple feed, fine. You have one of these, this style of antenna. And on the back of it, there's one empty and one used connector, and whichever one you use determines the polarization of the antenna. It's very clever. You want to match the antenna that is on your drone. That's the answer. So, if we look at our antenna that's on our drone, can I just go to the website? Oh my God, make it so hard. So if I bought a left-hand polarized antenna on the drone, I would use the left-hand polarized connector and vice versa. That's the answer. Saranya asks, when a battery says it's 1500 milliamp hours, does that mean 4.2 to 0 volts or in the usable range of 4.2 to 3.5? Saranya, the rated milliamp hours is usually from 4.2 down to 3.0. Yeah, so since you're not going to run the battery all the way to 3.0, you probably won't get the full 1500 milliamp hours out of it. But that's usually how it's rated. What should I do with channels, power, etc. for flying DJI systems around Walksnail and other systems? Rack FPV4. Rack, thank you for being a respectful DJI pilot, first of all. That's a great question to ask. In my experience, if you only have DJI pilots in the air, you get reasonably good results with everyone setting themselves to auto and just, that's it. If you have more than 3 pilots in the air, auto starts to fall apart a little bit. But as long as there's 3 pilots or less and everybody's on DJI, just setting them to auto works pretty good. As soon as you have analog or other pilots, yes, technically, if you look at it on the bench, DJI will attempt to automatically move away from them. But in my experience, you get better results with manual setting. When flying with other people, you should be at 20 megahertz or even 10 megahertz if you're willing to accept the reduction in bitrate. But with your DJI system at 20 megahertz, then you are approximately the same width in the spectrum as an analog or a Walksnail pilot. If you have the O4, use racing mode. Even if you're not racing, when you put your system into racing mode, it confines its transmissions to your channel. Whereas when you are not in racing mode, there are small telemetry transmissions all over the band, and that can cause interference with other pilots, even if you're not on their channel. Turn your output power down as low as you can reasonably turn it, while still getting the range that you need. If you're at 1200 milliwatts, you're going to be more likely to interfere. And, what was the fourth thing? 20 megahertz or 10 megahertz if you can, but 20 megahertz at most. Don't use 40 or 60. Lower your output power, racing mode. Oh, and channel coordination. So again, with racing mode, it fixes the channel coordination issues where the channel numbers don't match what you would expect them to. And the best thing to do is to have your DJI pilots on like channels 1 and 8 and your analog pilots on channels like 4 and 6. Okay? If you don't have the 04 and you don't have racing mode, all of these things apply. You still want manual channel, etc. But with the 03, you don't have the ability to turn your output power down, which is kind of a pain in the ass. So, but you can manually set the channel at the very least. Or another way to do it is just plug in max power, auto everything, fuck everybody else. I mean, that's a way to do it. You decide. Ooh, Nostalgisk asks, I'm going to be building a 3-inch freestyle drone. Should I get an AIO or a 20 by 20? Nostalgisk, there are 20 by 20 stacks used by racers that are absolutely bulletproof on a 5-inch racing drone. Okay, bulletproof is a strong word, but I don't trust the durability of the AIOs. Some of them are good, but I don't think... Let me put it this way. So I'm going to make this statement and then I'm going to be proven wrong. Nobody in the 5-inch racing world is running an all-in-one. I hesitate because I actually know that Evan Turner has been experimenting with all-in-ones in 5-inch racing drones. So if Evan Turner takes an all-in-one flight controller to nationals and races on it, then I will start to consider whether all-in-ones are at the same durability level as 20 by 20 stacks. But for years, people have been using like the Foxier 20 by 20 stack. There are a couple of 20 by 20 ESCs that are used by racers. And if we go to my website, fpvknowitall.com, and go to the racing page, this data is actually fairly up to date. It's maybe a year out of date, but still, what year did we do this? We put all this stuff in from the 2023 Nationals, I think. Maybe 2024, I don't remember. But this stuff is still pretty up to date. And if we look, because the racers don't change their gear that often. They change motors, but the flight controllers and ESCs have kind of been the same forever. So if you get the Hobby Wing stack or the Foxier Reaper stack, these are flight controllers and ESCs that 5-inch racers have beat the shit out of for years. And I would just feel so much more confident with that than I would with an all-in-one. Those 20mm stacks are pretty big for a 3-inch. Hey, that's not my problem. He said, should I get an all-in-one or a 20mm stack? That means that whatever he's doing, 20mm stack is in the cards. I guess what you're saying is the ESCs are oversized and might not fit. That's fair. That's fair. If they won't go, if your frame won't hold those big ESCs, then maybe. The stack is going to be more expensive too. Fair. Fair. Shoot FPV says, Evan Turner's test showed that all-in-ones are pretty durable. Okay, I saw his test too. I also just know what real, like, I believe his test was accurate, was honest, but I also just know in the real world that AIOs blow up more often. That's just like, you're not, one test that Evan Turner did in his garage is not going to change my mind about that. Yeah, like, he did tests where he was jamming the prop. Okay, now smash the stack into a concrete wall a couple times so it gets bent and so forth, and not just electrical stress. I don't know. What's better for a bando, digital or analog? Digital. Digital, it does way better with multipathing and does way better with giving you a usable image through penetration than analog. Analog has the advantage of lower latency, which some would argue that if you're doing tight proximity stuff in a bando where you have to like react quickly to tight environments, that the low latency of analog is better. That's a fair argument, but if you can't freaking see where you're going, then it doesn't matter how low the latency is. Would be my counter. Thank you, FPV Dreamer Mikes, for a $5 super chat. Are you going to do a full review on the new DJI goggles? Which new DJI goggles? The G3? I mean, I feel like you got a taste of the G3 in my 04 review. I don't know why I would review the G3 separately from the 04. The G3 are like, it's another DJI goggle. It's kind of very similar to the others, and it's just what you're going to buy if you're buying goggles today in a lot of ways. If you mean the N3 goggles, that's a little more interesting. Maybe. I don't know. Sunshine, good to see you in the Discord server. B25 ELRS RX almost new. Boxer radio with built-in ELRS. All my telemetry works fine except for battery voltage. Newly charged battery will read 3.5 to 3.7 volts per cell in DJI V2 goggles. If I unplug battery from drone and plug back in, it will fix the problem. What you need to do is go into the power and battery tab and confirm, and this is probably the case, but we would want to confirm it, that the flight controller is misreading the voltage. At that point, it's hardware damage. The flight controller has a voltage divider that basically is your voltage sensor, and if it's damaged and you're reading the wrong voltage, there's basically nothing you can do. There's like no way to set up an alternative sensor. Well, no way maybe is a little strong, but basically no way. I've seen cases where the voltage divider is damaged, especially if the drone went in the water. It can mess it up, and then it just reads the wrong voltage, and there's nothing you can do about it. If you have voltage sensing on the ESCs and you have ESC telemetry, you can switch your voltage sensor over to the ESC, but you have to have ESC telemetry for that. And I don't know if you do. B25, it's probably an all-in-one, isn't it? I'm questioning. Yeah, Blunty.
I would just say, if it is correct in Betaflight, like if your total voltage is correct, but your cell voltage is incorrect, then you need to check your cell range, just like your max and min, and make sure Betaflight is not misreading the voltage, because replugging it would change the voltage from
Blunty.
draw.
Well done. That's good, Blunty. That's a good suggestion. Damn. Well done. Continuing to earn his paycheck. Thank you, Blunty. This doesn't have Betaflight on it. Connecting. Hold on. Damn, dude. Come on. Yeah, freaking. So here in the power and battery tab, what you want to do is plug in the battery, and you want to see the cell count. Where does it show the cell count? I know it. Yeah, it'll show the cell count here where it says connected. So this is just a flight controller. It doesn't have a battery, but if you have a high volt battery, or if your battery is slightly overcharged, it will miscalculate the cell count. Because let's say I plug in a battery that's 4.35 volts, okay? Well, I've told Betaflight that the max cell voltage is 4.3 volts. So Betaflight will be like, let's say I've got, hang on, let me do the numbers here. Let's say I'm at 4.35 times 6S battery, 4.35 volts. I'm at 26.1 volts. Betaflight sees 26 volts, and it goes, divide by 6. Well, that's 4.35 volts. It can't be a 6S, because you told me the maximum was 4.3. So it takes 26.1 and it goes divide by 7. Aha! This is a 3.7 volt 7S battery. Got it. Now, if you plug the battery in and replug it a couple times, maybe you do it long enough that the voltage comes down and now it's 4.30 volts, and then it reads correctly as a 6S. That's a really great guess, Blunty. So, what you want to do is plug in and check the connected status, and it will show the cell count and see if that's correct. And if that's wrong, you have two choices. One is adjust the maximum cell voltage up a little bit, change it to 4.4 or something. And the other is you can go in the CLI and there's an option, force battery cell count. That's it. Force battery cell count equals 6, and you could just force it to a 6S, and it'll never have that problem again. Yeah, Sunshine, if you're running high volts, change that from 4.3 to like 4.37, or force battery cell count. This is especially relevant when you're using high voltage batteries, not just like 6S high volt, but if you're using like a 12S battery, because that if you think about a one cell battery, 4.2 to 3.0 is the entire voltage range. With a two cell battery, 4.2 to 3.0 is half the voltage range roughly. The higher your cell count, the smaller those distinctions become, and the more likely it is that when you plug in, the little sort of variance in voltage means it'll misread the cell count. When I was running my 12S Beast class, it would not often, but semi-regularly misread the cell count as like 11S or 13S. And so I would manually set the cell count for that one. And I think it's once you get above like 10S, it makes a lot of sense to manually set the cell count. Is race mode on DJI 04 able to be used with analog on 25 milliwatts? Short answer, yes. Longer answer, check out my video. Is DJI 04 finally ready for racing? There we go. Is DJI 04 finally ready for racing? We raced with HD0, DJI 04, and analog, all pilots sitting next to each other, and it worked fine. I would like to also say, and I didn't make a video out of this, but I went to a race, an actual race with actual pilots, not just a test that I set up in somebody's garage. And I raced the 04, another friend raced the 03, we had analog and HD0 pilots. We did not have separate digital heats. We put the DJI pilots on 1 and 8, and we put the analog pilots on the inside. Or is it the other way around? Frick. The 03 can't go to 8. It must have been the other way around. DJI pilots on the inside, analog pilots on the outside. And it all worked fine. Yeah, I actually talked about it on a previous live stream. Got a comment here from Bagzilla who says, I saw you were racing. Yeah, okay. Oh, there we go, okay. So here, I guess this is probably going to be my best lap. I might have crashed out because I was pushing. I'm not sure. Anyway, yes is the short answer. Can be done. You know, there's always little quirks you have to work around, but it's very doable. Let's get the last of the super chats as we come to the end of the stream. Duck Quack asks, thank you for 5 Australian dollars. Crashed my 04 Lite. The connectors are busted. Can I buy it anywhere or send back to DJI? No, you have to send it back to DJI. People who have had this problem in the past have gotten new boards from DJI. They just send them a new one. So contact DJI support, treat it as a warranty. DJI will probably replace it. And hopefully DJI will do a better job strengthening it in the future. Best tiny drone for backyard or park, 03 and TBS needed. Woof. For backyard or park, I'm thinking 2 to 2.5 inch. I assume you mean a bind and fly. Excuse me. I have I'm going to suggest you check out this video. Tiny Whoop with DJI 03 on board. Right now you're looking at cinematic footage from the DJI 03 Air unit. And I wouldn't blame you if you were thinking, wow, what's the freaking point? We've all seen great cinematic footage. So first of all, don't do the stable volume. Turn that off. The color is great, the resolution is great, the image detail, range, penetration, everything about the 03 is amazing. But what makes this footage so special is not the 03 Air unit, but the quadcopter that is carrying it. Because the quadcopter that's carrying it, it's not a 7-inch cruiser, it's not a 5-inch freestyle drone, it's not even a 3-inch Cinewhoop. It is a 85mm 2-inch Cinewhoop flies really good on a 750 milliamp hour 2S battery. This is one of the smallest and lightest quadcopters that you can buy right now with the DJI 03 Air unit on board. But there are two things that make this quadcopter really stand out from other quadcopters in the same size and weight class. And one of them... Anyway, check that video out. I think you're going to like what you see. I wish someone would review the new Jumper Smart Radio for $50. This seems like a solid starter radio. I don't think you should buy it. For $65, you should get the Radio Master Pocket. Jumper, well, Blunty, do we have a clip coming up on the Livestream Clips channel about the Smart Radio? I think we talked about it yesterday, or last week.
Yes.
Is that out? Or is
coming
that
up. It's
okay.
Not out yet.
Okay. Keep an eye on the Joshua Bardwell Livestream Clips channel for my detailed comments on why I would hesitate to recommend the Jumper Smart Radio. Oh, no, don't buy that one. It has custom Jumper TX build of Edge TX. It's not using standard firmware. No, that's a deal breaker for me. I wasn't going to shit on it just for being a Jumper radio, because Jumper, a lot of people use Jumper and they're happy with it, even though in my opinion the build quality of Jumper is not quite there compared to Radio Master. But they're doing some proprietary hardware bullshit, or proprietary firmware bullshit. Do not buy the Jumper Smart Radio because of that. That's my opinion. Thank you, Myron Plett, for $5 Canadian. Building my first FPV drone. I have a Xylo F4 V3. When I make changes in Betaflight config, it stops working. No gyro or anything shows up anymore. Do you mean when you flash it? That means you flashed the wrong firmware. If you mean just changing the configuration, then that's a bigger problem. I would suggest reaching out over email, and I'll see if I can sort you out. Shoot FPV says, thought you would like this fact. Did you know a screw is essentially just a ramp that lets you multiply your force applied? Makes sense to me. I like it. What's your opinion on AOCODA flight controllers and ESCs? Are they legit? What is an NT $sign? I don't recognize that one. What is an NT? Taiwan dollars. Got it. Thank you for the donation. Sorry, I just had a funny thought. I'm not real familiar with AOCODA, to be honest with you. AOCODA RC. Who the fuck is AOCODA RC? You never know with these companies. Like, it could be an established manufacturer under a new name making good quality stuff. I mean, the flight controller's 8S rated and an 80 amp ESC. That tells me that they're swinging for the fences, right? Like, they're trying to go after kind of a higher end market. They're not going after the ultra budget market. They could be good. It's hard to say. Can I not open this image in a bigger tab? Can I not see it bigger? No? The board layout is fairly sparse. It doesn't look like super packed tight. And the layout of the components, I don't know how to say this. The layout of the components has a regularity to it that makes me wonder if the designer of the flight controller had a lot of experience. I'm not sure how to put it. Like, if you look at a lot of flight controllers, there's not a lot of wasted space on the PCB. And, like, why is there a row of resistors here? Well, do those resistors need to be here? Or, like, when I see components all in a row, it makes me think that whoever designed this was just like, I don't know, here's my resistors, and then I'll route my traces, rather than putting the resistor where it would optimally go. Does that make sense? Like, electrically speaking, where is the best place for this resistor to be? I don't know, I just put them all in a row. So I'm a little, and then, I don't know, I'm a little suspicious. Let me look at the ESC. Where's the ESC? ESC looks fairly normal. I mean, who knows? That's not a major criticism. I'm just a little suspicious of the layout. I could be just overreacting. $42,688 gyro is fine. S-Bus VTK. Ground S-Bus R2T2. R2. UART2, UART4, UART1. 8 motor outputs, UART5. That's 3. 4 UARTs so far. That's good. Yeah. Interesting. It could be good. They're swinging for the fences with the ESC and the 8S rated flight controller, so it could be good. That's a good price for an 8S stack. Maybe it's okay. It doesn't, yeah. For the right price, I might give it a try. Tulio says, I fried my Cobra X goggles with the wrong cable, but I think the diversity receiver is fine. Should I take the plunge and get HD0 goggles? Any ideas? If you're only flying analog, I think that you should get like the SkyZone Sky 040 Pro goggles, which are $350, $360. I don't think the additional $350 for the HD0 goggles makes a lot of sense if you only fly analog. If you fly analog and HD0, then the HD0 goggles are the way to go, even though they're so much more expensive. That's my opinion. Are Armatan frames like the Beaver relevant? Yeah, if somebody's buying them. Sure. I think I just bricked my flight controller. RIP. Is there more to that question?
Just be clear, you did not brick your flight controller, but you might have mean you broke it somehow.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, you can't really brick it. You just put it into DFU mode and reflash it. Yeah. Hidalgo Cordones, thank you for $10. No question, just a donation. Thank you. Guess what? We got about 5 minutes left in the stream, but don't worry. You don't have to stop. You don't have to go outside. No! Stay in and listen to Ciati stream. Ciati, that was me. That's not you. Ciati FPV is going to be streaming. He's going to be figuring out what the best 2-inch tiny whip prop is. Well, I'm sure no one will find his results at all controversial. Joas Gosweiler says there's more to this and I'm typing in the Discord. Okay, I'll wait. Let's see here. Well, he's typing in the Discord, but now I don't see anything. That's all the super chats. All right, we're 3 minutes from the end of the stream. If you leave a super chat now and it doesn't get answered because I sign off the stream, that's on you. That's not on me. Sometimes people leave super chats right as I'm signing off, and then they're like, "Hey, Bardwell didn't read my super chat." I'm like, "Come on, guys."
He posted in public chat.
Oh. Where is he? It's the Fortini F4. Wow, I haven't seen that in a long time. Are TX4 and VBAT connected? Because yesterday I had my TBS Unify Pro 32 Nano wrongly connected to VBAT. TX4 and VBAT should never be connected. What are you talking about? Okay, first of all, this is a ancient flight controller. Nothing wrong with that, but wow. Really digging into the way back. I plugged in the battery and it popped. So you have the Pro 32 Nano, which is supposed to get 5 volts. You plugged in the battery and your Pro 32 Nano popped. I still am unclear what the link is between TX4 and VBAT. How does that question even make sense?
I think when you flip the controller over, the pads are on top of each other.
Oh, interesting. He's right. You're right, Blunty. No, they shouldn't be connected, obviously. I mean, okay, I'm sorry. You wouldn't be asking if it was obvious, but you probably suspect that they shouldn't be connected, and you are right. You soldered smart audio to VBAT by accident. Okay. Okay. So you destroyed the Unify, but the flight controller should be fine. Right? Waiting. Today I turned the flight controller around and soldered the Unified to TX4. Okay. And it also popped because now there's continuity between TX4 and VBAT. I'm waiting. I can't wait to hear the end of this story. Yes, it also popped. Okay. So stop. First of all, stop blowing up VTXs. Get your multimeter out and test if somehow VBAT is now on TX4. What does your multimeter say? I think we might just scrap this flight controller. No disrespect. Waiting. Oh, it's 3 p.m. Okay. I think we're going to wrap this up. I'll keep talking to you in the Discord, SOAS. But I think we're going to wrap up the live stream. All right, guys, I'll see you tomorrow at 8 p.m. For our Monday night stream. Siati, have a great stream. And that's going to be it for the stream, though. Bye, everybody.